Let's talk about the K5 Pacific wheel arrangement that American Flyer made beginning before World War II, when they hadn't yet come out with S gauge but ran on O gauge track. And then after World War II, they moved that model to their S gauge line. Today on Austin's American Flyer. Pennsylvania was one rail line that liked to use a certain kind of squared off boiler that tended to burn a specific type of coal that was common more along the eastern part of the United States, Pennsylvania area. And this Belpar firebox had this kind of squared off shoulders, if you will. And then this was the model that Flyer used to produce their model of it. And so let's kind of fast forward to following World War II. S-Scale has been released, and there's a couple steam engines that they released right away. One of them is this K5 Pacific. And so in 46, they came out with two different numbers. They came out with a 312, and that had a smoke contender, which is what this one is here. You can see the tube there, and we've got the fill up here, and smoke and choo-choo unit is here in the tender, so that's called an SIT, and that would push smoke through a tube up through and out the chimney. And they also then in the years following 46 kind of changed the stamp on the outside a little bit, but you still see we have an SIT here. This would have been in late 46, early 47. And then following that, they put the smoke and boiler. We got different numbers, 313, 315, 316, so on and so forth. But today we're going to look at one particular number that I haven't really talked about, and that's the 310. So next we'll take a quick tour of the research labs, American Flyer Research Labs here on the channel, and we'll visit our friend Doyle. And you can see here he talks a little bit about the 310. And how there's basically type 1 and type 2, and how the first version that came out had Pennsylvania. So just like the 312 that I showed you on my shelf there. And then the second variation had American Flyer lines, so no Pennsylvania anymore. And they had the Pennsylvania emblem. And it's a little hard to see, but you can see the type 1 is a little less rare, a little more common, while the type 2, which says American Flyer lines, is a little less common, a little more rare. So that's what we're going to look at today, and I'd invite you to join me. So before us here is a type 2 from 1946, 310. You can see the numbers are very nice and clear, and this engine has come to me from John. He asked me to go through it, and he mentioned that it was missing a reverse unit. So that's one thing that I need to do for him. And I noticed a few things. Number one, the tabs that hold the shell in the chassis together, both of those L brackets are broken off. I noticed we've got a missing journal box cover here on the tender, and of course our coupler is gone. And one thing that's not missing, but looks like it would be, is a SIT. Notice we have the hole there, so this is where the SIT would go. But then, if we follow along the engine, somebody didn't drill that out. No, wrong. It was actually from the factory this way. So Flyer set a standard that said, if you have a 0 in the last position, you have no choo-choo and you have no smoke. Now, sometimes they didn't follow their own logic, and so you can have 310s or engines that end in a 0 that do have choo-choo and smoke, but this was their stated practice. And so typically when you see a 2, you'll get both the choo-choo and the smoke, and if you see a 1, you get just the choo-choo. So a 301 is Atlantic, typically has just the choo-choo in it and no smoke. And a 312 K5, like we saw just a little bit earlier, have both the choo-choo and the smoke. So thought that was kind of interesting. So let's just put a little power to this thing and see what happens. So I put a little bit of AC power like I typically do and kind of wondered what would happen since there's no reverse unit, and it just buzzed. So I went and grabbed a DC transformer and went ahead and hooked that up. And with DC, we get a little bit of motion, but not much. That's about all I can get out of it. And so we've got some things that need to be worked on, lubricated and whatnot. But that's just kind of a reminder. The open frame motors that American Flyer produced actually will run off of DC. You can run any American Flyer engine off of DC power. And we don't oftentimes really think about that. And the reason we don't is because the reverse unit is a problem. It doesn't know how to deal with DC power. So that's the problem. Now, typically with a DC transformer, you have a direction switch to reverse the polarity, and that's how you change directions. So when you have an American Flyer engine that has a reverse unit and you put DC power to it, the DC or the reverse unit just gets all kinds of messed up. It can't calculate that. So anyhow, I just thought I'd show you that real quick, and now I get the fun of exploring what's going on with this thing. Now, typically I start in the tender and work my way forward, but since we know there's really not going to be much of anything here in the tender, I'm going to kind of go contrary to what I typically do and start here in the engine. So this little endeavor to repair this engine keeps me very intrigued. Now, for those of you that are newer to Flyer, you may see something interesting and a little bit unusual about this motor. Maybe you see two things that are a little bit unusual about this motor. So, when American Flyer first transitioned to S gauge, their brush holders looked like this. So there are two springs here that push in on brushes that have kind of a notch in the back of them, versus the later style, which had a canister that looked like this. So anyhow, not that there's anything wrong with this, it's just this is an earlier style. And what's more unusual about this particular arrangement is this, and this is the field. This is a DC field. So American Flyer, jumping on board some new technology every chance they got, started in 1948. I don't remember if there was anything in 47, but certainly in 48, they started producing DC motors. And they had another device that converted the AC power to DC. And there are advantages to DC operation, but the technology was kind of in its infancy and didn't really take hold very well. And so after about 2 years, they kind of abandoned it. And there were also some potential wartime, as I understand, some wartime shortages with the Korean War that may have made it harder to get parts. I don't know. So anyhow, all that to say, this is a DC field. And as I mentioned earlier, you can run American Flyer motors with their traditional fields, but someone went and installed a DC field in this. So I think that's fascinating. Typically, we see a field that looks like this, where we've got an actual wire wrap. And when you run a current through a wire that wraps around iron, typically, it creates a magnet or a magnetic field. That's why these are called fields. And the motor armature has 3 separate windings, and so those create fields. And without boring you with too many details, that's how the motor spins. Another option is to go with a DC field. Now, these DC fields are interesting because they have permanent magnets in them, but one of the things I understand is they have to be run somewhat frequently, because if they get left, unrun, the magnets de-energize. So one of the things I'm going to do, now that I'm thinking about it, is I'm going to go ahead and hook power up to this now that we've got it kind of exposed, and I'll put a few drops of lubricant in there, and let's just see if we can get it to run. Okay, so I'm still have my DC transformer out. I've just run straight off the transformer to back of the jack panel here, and I put a drop of lubricant here in the oil wick here at the back of the commutator, or I should say armature, and then I put a couple drops here at the front. I didn't do anything with the axles for the drive wheel or inside the worm gear, so I'm going to apply some power here. Okay, that's 100% power on my transformer. Kind of wonder if it'll speed up. Let's see if we got a magnet. Well, there's some magnetism there. All right. Next thing I'm going to do is pause the camera again, and I'll put some lubrication on the axle and drive gear. All right, well, we're back with our little test here, and I have the transformer all the way up, and I had a moment where it ran really good. I've oiled up the oil wick back here, but I could hear it kind of squawking like it was dry, so I actually put a little drop with a needle applicator down in there at the back side of the commutator, and it sped up and ran really nicely for just a little bit until that oil all flung off. You can see, and I probably have it all over my person now. But if I push on these springs behind the brushes, we get a little bit of an increase in power. So my guess is the brushes are probably pretty much worn out, because normally these springs do a good job of pushing on those. So only when the brushes get too short do the springs kind of lose some of that extra oomph that helps them push nice and squarely and firmly against the commutator surface. But anyhow, kind of a fun little test to see if this thing will work. But we'll go ahead and I'll put a regular open frame field in there and do a little bit of cleanup, and then I'll bring it back and we'll take a look at how things run and if they run any differently. Hey John, as I'm rebuilding your engine and putting in AC components, one of the things that I was like, oh yeah, I gotta have a certain kind of early reverse unit that has this metal tab that comes out the back that has the screw holes in it. And I got one, and I think I don't know, it might even be pre-war, just because I thought that, yeah, I'm pretty sure the post-war ones didn't have the holes on the side here, but I checked it, it works. I'll put new fingers in it and clean it all up. But those have like a plate underneath them, which raises them up just a little bit. And so I was like, what can I use? What can I use? And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I have all these accessory roofs that I 3D printed, and they actually have a hole in them already for the chimney that I hadn't added yet. And I was like, well, here we go. So anyhow, I cut that up. I drilled a second hole, and anyhow, this will now support the reverse unit like it's supposed to. And I checked, and it lines up. The lever lines up perfectly with the notch in the shell. So I just thought that's kind of fun to see, because I was thinking, man, I wish should I take the time to draw up in a design program, CAD program, a little plate to go on there. It's like, oh, I wish I had something. And I'm like, oh yeah, I got a bunch of these things. So anyhow, that's kind of fun. Okay, moving on. Well, we're back now that I've got everything from a motor perspective and reverse unit all wired up and put back together. So we've got added a reverse unit with a subplate made from a 3D printed accessory roof that I cut up. Reverse fingers have been replaced. Of course, all the wiring's new. I put an LED headlight in. Field is original Flyer, retrofitted, of course. as well as the brush plate assembly. Fan stock clips are, I should say, not fan stock, but clips are new that I bought and have modified to fit. So let's see what we get here. That's 30 miles per hour, 100%. So there we go. Gonna keep working on this, but it's moving along. Hi, John. A couple things that I thought I'd mention as I'm working on the tender, getting things taken apart and cleaned up before I put them back together. One is, I find this curious, but also not out of character, that American Flyer would reuse or use up parts they had. And you have on this tender what I would call blackened journal covers. Now, in contrast, you can see here is what they used for S scale post-war, and this would have been the 3/16 O gauge pre-war is my recollection. And the reason you've got one that is not blackened is because you were missing one. Now I do have some blackening agent, and I'm going to go ahead and take a stab at blackening that up for you, so it's not quite the eyesore that it is at the moment. But as I've been taking things apart and cleaning them, I noticed something else. So you have typically in this generation of wheel sets, they have a fairly short axle length with the tin metal side frames. But someone had put a replacement in for some reason, or they lost one or whatnot, and it was a little bit longer. And as I was cleaning things up and gauging things up, all of a sudden one of these end caps popped off. And I thought, oh no. And the reason they popped off is because the axle's too long. And as I tried to square up the tender side frames and get everything trued up and everything, it popped off the journal. And that's because the axle was sticking through. So fortunately, I had another wheel that would be correct, and I will put that in for you. But just something I thought was fascinating and you might find interesting as well. Welcome back, John. I got another update for you here. Your 310 is complete. See how much protrudes out the end of the wheel sets there. Didn't couple my cars. Let me get that. Okay. Found that I had a main drive nut that was loose, so got that tightened up. But that's the reason I like to get them some run time on the layout. Just to make sure that I don't have other things that I've failed to tighten or loosen or remember to do. So, a little bit about this engine. This one was really interesting. You had mentioned it didn't have a reverse unit, and the reason it didn't have a reverse unit is because it was set to run on DC, had a DC motor in it, American Flyer DC motor. So that's why we conversed on the phone, and basically I rebuilt this thing from the ground up. It's got a new reconditioned armature in it. It's got a used good stock Flyer open frame field. It's got a like new used brush holder, of course new brushes and springs. It's got a reverse unit that I believe is probably pre-war Flyer, and I tested it out and made some little adjustments to it, and it works absolutely beautifully. It'll reverse at very low voltage. Of course, then I rewired everything, all new wire. I did use cloth, just like original. I used cloth wiring, covered wire for the engine. I did put an LED headlight in there for you. Don't know how well you can You can see that here. What else did I do? The wiring from the tender to the engine was in terrible shape, and that was original cloth. So I removed the original factory pins, and I added new silicone covered wire and ran that from the tender up to the back of the jack panel. That'll give you nice flexibility. On the tender itself, of course, took everything apart, cleaned it. I found that it was missing one journal cover, and what's interesting about this is the journal covers on there, again, look like they might be pre-war. They're a darkened metal, and I don't have any darkened metal ones. I just have the ones that were an S scale, so I put one of those on, and I did try to chemically blacken it, but it didn't take. So sorry about that. You have one journal box that's shiny and the rest are dull. What else can I tell you? There was a missing jewel in the tender, so I put a green jewel in there for you. Oh, back to the journal. I also discovered that someone had put in the wrong length axle for one of the tender wheel sets. So I replaced that with the correct wheel set so that it doesn't push journal out anymore. That's what happened. That's why we were lost journal. Also removed the pin and put a knuckle coupler in, which she requested. Of course, I pulled all the metal off that I could and cleaned and polished everything. And one of the beautiful things about these early Flyer steam engines is the kind of metal that they use just polishes up so wonderfully. This thing has absolutely incredible paint on it. It is one of the nicest steam engines I've seen. I would say that it's a little bit, especially on the tender, you can see it's a little bit shiny. That'll dull up as my cleaning products disappear. I mentioned this to you here, but I did find small evidence of zinc pest. There was a tiny bit down here behind the handrail. I guess it helps if I point the camera in the right direction. So put a little bit of paint on that. There's a little bit here, put a little paint on that. Same on the other side. I didn't find any spots that seemed to be catastrophic failures in the metal, but just little bits here and there, but not much. So anyhow, you have got an absolutely gorgeous engine. It runs so very smoothly, and wow, lucky you. I'll go ahead and do some more operation of it, and we'll get some flybys.